All right, and we are live. Happy Thursday, everybody. It is noon for our East Coast watchers and listeners. It is 9 a.m. Pacific time for everybody out there in the West Coast, which is where our guest comes to us from today. And we're live on LinkedIn, live on the Facebook group. And as always, I'm bringing you guys some incredible people with big goals that really want to change the world and really helping people that move the wheels of the world. My guest today is Adi Clevitt, and she really helps people to take a look at their business, take a look at their processes, and streamline them so you guys are wasting less time. You're figuring out how to make more money. You're figuring out how to grow. Adi, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Absolutely. So just quickly, before we kind of dive into things, tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys do, and then I want to kind of find out where you started.
Sure. So what we do is we help businesses put in management infrastructure and systems in place. And we specialize in creating, documenting, and implementing processes and procedures.
So how did you decide you wanted to do that? Because I think there's not a lot of people that say, oh my gosh, I get so excited about processes. Now, I know I do because I'm a super nerd and I love this stuff. But how did you decide that this was going to be, the thing that you were going to help people handle?
Well, when my background is industrial engineering. So that's what I've been doing now for over 25 years. And I was always good with science. I'm really good with people. And when I was going to college, when I had to decide what I'm going to study, an industrial engineer would be perfect because it was a great combination of science and people and understanding people and also using, being an engineer. So I started as an industrial engineer. And then ever since I've been doing this, I've been improving processes, organizing, getting things more efficient, and just kept on that line. And that's what I'm doing.
I love that. And the thing I love the most is this is something we should always be doing. But this is actually a great opportunity to do it right now when you don't have as much traffic in your business like a lot of people have right now to handle these processes while the roads have a little bit less people on them. So I think we're in a unique opportunity right now that people can reach out to you if they need help or whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
And I guess before we dive into a little bit more, the thing we like to do here real quick, we always like to give a shout out to all of our people that are commenting back to us. So shout out to Jennifer Parise on Facebook. Shout out to Tony Delgado that says good morning to us over on LinkedIn. Jesus Armando, good morning. Guys, if you haven't been on these lives before, if you haven't seen some of the ones I've done, we do make time for the guests to answer some of your questions at the end. So if you do have them, put them in the chat. We'll be looking out for them. And Adi will be more than happy to be checking out your questions because we love to talk to really, really cool people. So I guess coming back to you then, Adi, when you and I were first chatting, I was just so interested in what you're doing because I know for my company, one of the big things that we've done is we've systemized so much because a lot of business owners waste time and they can't bring on staff because there's not a system or there's not different things in your business to be able to do that. And I think a lot of times we kind of create this prison, right? Right. Our business is this thing built around us that we can't really work our way out of because we don't know always what we're doing because it's based on us. So I guess when we're taking a look at this, other than that, what I just mentioned, why would a company want to start systemizing processes? Why would we want to take a look at that?
Different reasons. So one of them you mentioned about the current situation and the fact that there is time to do it. But another point is that, we had everything going and it stopped, right? Mm-hmm. So all the processes, all the procedures, all the knowledge of everything that was done before the stop, and some businesses didn't stop, granted, but still businesses had to change or pivot or do something different, right? Mm-hmm. So having that knowledge documented is very important. Mm-hmm. So you don't lose that knowledge and that you can continue on and have that knowledge captured somewhere. Other reasons, it is risk mitigation in terms of, if you want to make sure your customer service is top notch, you're all the time producing the same, you have that uniformity and producing all the time the same. So you need to have processes and procedures to follow. It's good for training, for onboarding, time saving, efficiency, etc.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Jesus Armando says, thank you for that too. He's going to be checking this out. Apparently that was something he needed to hear. And I guess then looking at that, Adi, I guess a really good point there too is if a system is based totally on an employee and they leave and you don't have it documented, you're in hot water, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give you a story. Is I was actually traveling overseas and I got a call from a colleague of mine that he wanted me to talk to a business owner. I think the business owner was actually not in the US, he was in Europe. And I got on a call on the flight. Then I got off the flight, gave him a call, and basically he had an employee that was leaving, and he was living with basically a 2-week notice. And this is an employee that has been there for so long. He was basically in charge of their entire operation. And there was no way to document it in 2 weeks. There is just no way, right? I mean, and all that knowledge is gone. And that obviously the business owner was freaking out about it. So that's the moral of the story, is have everything documented, all the processes and procedures in place. So then when somebody leaves, then you can basically have a business continuity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And real quick, guys, you'll see the ticker on the bottom of the screen. I know you guys are probably going to be really excited about this and want to get in contact with Adi. So actually, I put her email on the bottom of the screen, so you guys can actually get in touch with her super, super easily.
Absolutely.
So where do we start? Like, where do we start in putting together a process? Like, I'm sure a lot of business owners are super confused about that.
Absolutely. That's the first question that I get. Like, where do I start? Because, even before I answer that question, let's talk about why they don't start, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're too overwhelmed. It's like something that is on your to-do list. I don't know about you, Jeremy. I have my to-do list that I have things there that I write, but I never get to it, right?
And you know what I find too? Like those things on the to-do list, they're always like, I was talking to my wife about this morning. They're always like things that you look at and you're like, I could pay somebody a lot less money than my time to be doing this. Why am I doing this?
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's why I have exactly. That's exactly right. We're not going to talk about that. That's a whole different topic. We can talk about time management at a different time. But the point is like, where do I start? So why do you don't start? Is because it's too overwhelming, right? It looks like a big task. I have my entire organization. Let's say you have 40 employees working for you. It's a big company or medium-sized company. Where are you going to start documenting all the processes and procedures? Production always takes priority, right? I mean, you have clients calling, you have customers calling, maybe you're a doctor, you have patients calling. Production will take priority, especially nowadays. If somebody's calling you, you are going to service them right away. You better, otherwise you're going to lose business. So it's overwhelming.
I was looking at cars this weekend and that didn't go well for me. But I won't get into that story.
Okay. Well, I want to hear about it, but I'll hear about it later. Okay. So it looks so overwhelming. What do I do? So here's my advice. You need to look at your business all as a whole, all the departments, all the divisions in your company, and ask yourself which area, if you had well-documented processes and procedures, will give you the biggest return on investment. That's the number one question that I ask. And do not try to do it all at once. It doesn't work. Identify one area. So for our listeners right now, I would like you to do this right now. Think about your business. Whether you're a solopreneur or you're running a company of 1,500 people or more, doesn't matter. You have to start somewhere. So look at everything that you are doing, everything that your company does, and ask yourself, what area of the company, if you had well-documented processes and procedures right now, will get you the biggest return on investment. And we can also define return on investment. It can be obviously money, but it can also be time. Time is a very valuable resource. And it might be that you're, just like what you said, Jeremy, let's say you are spending time doing those processes or doing some actions that you can actually pay somebody to do. But what's stopping you from doing that? It's probably, well, how am I going to find time to train that person? Or, I do it already so much that it's faster for me to do it myself, right? I mean, do you ever run into that?
Oh, absolutely. But then the problem is you're going to get stuck doing that forever.
Exactly. So that's the delegation 101 is document that, find out, figure out what is that area, and start a documentation right there. And then you will find that you can actually delegate it to others.
I guess then looking at that, like, do you find one area of, because I know there's not every company is the same, but there's similarities. Do you find that there's a certain area to start with as comparative with others? I know in our company, we started 4 years ago, we documented production because I was the first production person. So I basically wrote everything down and handed it to somebody. And then I went into sales, wrote up everything in sales, found somebody to do that. So I guess, like, where is the best place for us to start then when we're looking at it?
That's why I do a more thorough analysis. Obviously, there is no one answer that fits all. But what I see from experience, it's usually either the production area or the sales, because that's the areas that are hurting the most. But it also might be an area where you have somebody that is leaving the company or is not going to be there, or area of confusion, or area that creates a lot of problems. Because, I've started with companies also documenting, let's say, their accounting processes, because they were not able to, there was somebody who is retiring, or somebody who is leaving, or somebody who is just not, they were about to let them go, or whatnot. It can be different areas, but I usually see production or sales. Those are the areas that usually people like to start with.
So then I guess looking at that, then, like, how do we get our team on board with that? Because it's one of the most vital things to make sure, like, our leadership and our team and everybody is on board. Because yes, we could do all this time to create all these processes, but if nobody's following it, it's not going to handle the problem and allow us to do what we're looking to do. Like, how do we get our team on board?
Good. So the way that I do it is I always get the buy-in from the team. Because you brought up a great question, and that's one thing that a great point. I want to make sure that our listeners understand that they do not have to do it all themselves. Because that's another thing that, as a business owner, you think, oh, now I'm going to document my processes and procedures, and I'm going to do it all myself. No, you have to utilize your team. You have to utilize your team to document, to identify and document those processes and procedures. And we'll talk about it a little bit later about how you actually get into the process documentation project. But in terms of utilizing your team and getting them on board, you have to get their buy-in. What I like to do is I always start, unless I have a team that's already on board, I will always start with a survey. I will survey the team, and I will find out what are their go buttons. What is in it for them, for each individual, because each individual has to have his own why as to why they're going to do it, right? Why processes and procedures? And just like you asked me in the beginning, how do I see that benefits a business? So it can be for training, it can be for onboarding, it can be for expansion, it can be for risk mitigation, it can be for better customer service, legacy, whatever it is. We need to find out what motivates those individuals to actually have those processes and procedures, and then use that in order to implement. So for instance, let's take an example. Let's say, for instance, we are documenting the processes and procedures for a sales department. So a big construction company, they have, let's say, 20 estimators. We need to document the processes and procedures. The why for the owner is because they see that not every estimator is following the same protocol, and they want to make sure that it is actually uniform, so they get uniform results. They also want to expand, so they want to add more estimators. They need a better training system. So that's the owner. But why would the estimator want to participate in actually documenting the processes and procedures? Or even, why would they change the ways and actually and follow a certain procedure when each one of them had their own way of doing things? And the reason, there can be different reasons, but for example, when I did that survey on that construction company, one of the estimators wanted, he felt like he was a little bit, there was too much to do, and he wanted an assistant. He was more interested in closing the deals and not doing the admin as much. Good. So then we had the why for him to document those processes and procedures was that he can actually pass part of what he's doing to somebody else. And also, by documenting these processes and procedures, we showed him, I basically talked to him and showed him how by he can actually get an administrative assistant to do that, because he can show what parts of the process are really not bringing the company as much income as if he were to go to the next person, to the next closing, instead of doing the admin. So we accomplished that. He was extremely happy. He got his administrative assistant, and the company ran smoother, and they made more money. So that's always a win-win situation.
I love that, because I don't think it's something we always take into consideration, right? Like, everybody has their own reason, like, why they would be interested in that. And also they would have their own reasons why they would be resistant to that as well. So you got to find out, I guess, what's going on for them, so you can kind of let them know how you would handle that. I love the administrative assistant part, because that's also something that we did in our sales area. and it helped to increase our salesperson's productivity, the number of people he was able to close because he had somebody helping him with a lot of the admin. So it is really, really vital to see where the snags are. And, by doing that, it can help you to see that as well.
Yeah, you're right. And it's also like, what are the stops? Because, sometimes you can have a team member that feels like their job is on the line, or it's a threat because now, I'm doing it so well. I've been with the company for that many years. Now you're going to ask me you want my secret sauce. I don't want to give it to you because then you're going to fire me. Right. I hear it a lot, so that is not the reason why to document processes and procedures. Mm-hmm. Another aspect, and you might relate to that, it's like when I work with companies that are in the creative area, mm-hmm. they don't like processes and procedures because they feel like it's going to somehow stop their creativity or affect it, right? Because they just want to create, which is amazing. I love creation and I like people that create. The process, having well-defined processes and procedures will actually allow you to create even more, because then you can really concentrate on creating things as opposed to recreating things that can be done by others that can help you, or by some routine that allows you more time to do what you're really good at.
Well, I guess then taking a look at it too, and I've heard you speak to this before, is I think a lot of people, they think they create a process and it's done. Like it's done, the process is done.
Yeah.
This is the same process we've been using the last 10 years. Why would we change it? So I guess looking at it then, how often should we be checking in on our processes to make sure, like, hey, they're lined up, they're currently a fit, they fit current technology, which changes a lot. Like, how often should we be taking a look at these?
So it depends by the company and how mature the company is and how the processes, how much they're ingrained and how much is actually changed. But I would say anywhere from quarterly to, yearly for sure. You can't go more than a year not looking at your processes and procedures. I recommend either quarterly or biannually, because if your processes are fine, it will take you not a long time to review them, but it allows you to have it there, the team members to actually review the processes and remember that they're there. You should use the processes on a regular basis, so it shouldn't be like, oh, I forgot that this process is here, or there is even a process for that. But truth is that we go on our day-to-day operations and we might forget. So if you have that routine of every quarter reviewing it with your team, it will become part of the culture. It will become part of the organization. And so I recommend definitely have a frequency and stick to it.
I love that. Well, I guess then taking a look at that, Adi, like if we were taking a look at basically putting together a process, like what does that look like, and what should we be doing in order to do that?
Okay, so the first thing that you do is you have to find out where to start. So again, the question is what area? If you had well-defined processes and procedures, you will cut down the confusion, or you will get the biggest return on investment. So we identify the area. Mm-hmm. The second step is to map the processes. So mapping the processes, meaning you have to identify the beginning point, the start point, and the end point, the end result, and then identify the milestones or the key points, the key procedures that exist in between. So you have to map it. We love using flowcharts. That's what we do. So when you work with us, we're going to flowchart your entire organization. We love using that tool because it's visual and it allows you to see, we color code it so you can see who does what. So I highly recommend using flowcharts. Once you have the flowchart, the process is mapped, then you have to identify the areas that you need to document. And here is a pitfall. Here is something that I see people do, is they spend a lot of time documenting processes and procedures that are not viable to the business. So you really need to look at what are the most important processes and document those. Once you have that documented,
could you give us an example of what would be spending too much time on something that's not viable to the business?
Sure. So let's say, for instance, we are documenting the sales department. Mm-hmm. So I go, okay, let's document the sales process. So if I document the sales process and I'm mapping the process, so I go, okay, where's the beginning? The beginning will be the entrance of the lead. You get the lead all the way to the close and onboarding a new client. So I will identify the steps in between, which will be qualify the lead, basically before that even getting the lead, right? So it's the lead generation, the qualify the lead, then preparing the proposal, presentation, and then the close, and then the onboarding of a new client. I mean, obviously, each this is very simplistic sales process.
Right,
there are
right.
steps in between, right? And then I will take each one of those steps and I will document the most important things that you are doing on each. So with the idea that if I were, and let's say it's your company, Jeremy, and you are hiring me as a salesperson, and I need to be able to read it and understand what I'm going to do, right? So those are the core processes here. Those are the core parts of your sales process. If you are now going to spend time documenting how you work your software, your estimating software and all that, those are important. I'm not saying don't do that, but it won't be the first phase when you're actually documenting everything that is going on in your sales process, right? Because it's not like, unless you are hiring, unless you are hiring somebody and you want to actually build a training manual. But the first thing is stay on this level. Basically, I start on the upper level, then I go to the next level, then the next level, and then the next level. So you really have to identify, because what I've seen happen is that you can spend months documenting your sales process, but you need to move on to also document your operations and your HR and your accounting. So just document on a certain level where you can move on, and then you can come back and go to a lower level. Or you can utilize your team that are doing it on a day-to-day basis. You can just task them with the task of document what you're doing. So that way you can go into a more granular aspect of it.
I like that. So we're identifying, we're putting together a flow chart, we're documenting, but we're not getting too significant. We're making sure it's just the major processes in each process. Right. Is there anything else around that we should be taking a look at?
Absolutely. So so we talked about process mapping. Then you have to run it as a project management, meaning you have to decide what are the processes you're going to document, or what are the procedures. When I say processes and procedures, I just want to clarify the lingo here. So processes I'd refer to like a big like let's say you have your sales process, and a procedure will be the step-by-step actions that you take within that process. And so you basically, when you started, you have to make a list of all the procedures you're going to document and utilize your team. Don't do it all yourself. So look at your team. Let's say we're still on the sales process. So look at your team and who are your best salespeople? Who is that person that you want to clone? And, whenever I do a webinar and I ask my audience, okay, so think about the person that you want to clone. What do you think, Jeremy, they're saying? What is the number one response I get?
I don't know, because I'll tell you what came to mind for me, and maybe this is right, maybe it's not. But like our sales guy Drew is probably he's our head of sales. He's probably the single person that's most like me in the world. So he thinks exactly like I do.
Exactly. So that's because you hire already somebody who thinks like you. But usually what I get in the chat is people say, I want to clone myself. I want to clone myself. I want to clone myself. Okay, good. You can, absolutely. So definitely that will be you. In that case, you will play a big role in documenting those processes. But in your case, you will take Drew and you say, okay, you will task Drew with, okay, those are the processes we have to document. I would like you to write what you do. So you run it as a project management. Is any project, you're managing the project. So you'll have due dates. You'll assign it to specific people. You will have coordination meetings to make sure that it's being done. You will have assignments in between. And then you will review it. So the best thing is to review it with your leadership team, not just by yourself. The leadership team has to be, obviously the leadership team that have a stake in what you're doing, that you're not going to take somebody from, let's say, human resources that doesn't really know what's happening in sales to qualify that particular process. So you're going to take the leadership team, the sales leadership team, and then they're going to go over the processes and make sure that there is uniformity in what is being done. So you have that. And then the next step will be to streamline the processes. So I'm a firm believer, and I tell it to my clients, I don't implement any change until I actually have everything documented the way it is, because we don't want to lose any piece of information or any piece of knowledge that is there. Extremely important. Because while you're documenting your processes and procedures, you will all of a sudden get all these bright ideas, and maybe we should change that, and maybe we should now do this and that. So great on the ideas, write them down, and keep them, because those ideas, I love creative ideas, and we need those because that's where our imagination, and that's where we create, and that's where we develop new things. But when you're doing this project, write down exactly how it's being done right now.
Well, because that could be pulling you off of what's working if you're doing something else, because then you're actually recreating the process rather than documenting.
Exactly. And you don't know, and then it gets into a confusing situation of like, well, this works, didn't work, and you don't. So first of all, identify what you have, then go over it. And even yesterday, I was meeting with a client, and we were documenting, and then I asked a question, because you see, that's why I see my value in the participation of this process, because I ask really hard, good questions about like, why are you? I'm challenging, like, okay, so why is it being done this way? And because I have knowledge of so many organizations, I probably work with thousands of businesses, I can see when something is missing in the process. So I challenged them and I asked them, like, why is this step missing? Why are you not doing this and that and that? And then I go, it's because, I'm sorry to say, because this is the way it's always been done. And that is the number one question. That is something that I recommend you always listen to, is like, why are you doing something? Because that's the way it's always been done. No, you have to have a better explanation, better. It has to be justified in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. If that is the way this is done because it's always been done, then you need to start asking more questions like, is it working? And always backed up by your metrics or your KPIs if it's working or not working, right? Mm-hmm. So the point being is that you document it and then you streamline it. Then you find the opportunities where, and this is the fun part, because that's where you find that the money is missing, right? For instance, we were documenting, I was working with a construction and a contractor, a specialist contractor, and we were documenting their accounting processes. And, they do installations, and at the end, they bill the client, they bill the customer. So that's part of their process. And they wrote it, we wrote their process of how to end a job, how to bill. But then we saw that they have accounts receivables. They shouldn't have accounts receivables because everything should be paid at the end of the project. And then they realize that they're not following their own process, right? They don't following the process of actually the technician getting the invoice, notifying the office and then sending the invoice electronically to the homeowner. And we discussed why it is like that. And we saw that part of the problem is that the homeowner is not always at home, right? Mm-hmm. So then we decided, okay, so we need to tweak the process. And part of it is that the office notifies the homeowner in advance that this is how it's going to happen. This is what needs to happen, and ask them if they're going to be at home or not at home. And if they're not, this is the invoice, just to let them know that they will have to pay. Of course, they need to see if it was done to their satisfaction, so they have 24 hours to pay. But we just implemented simple things, and they just start collecting. There were no more accounts receivables, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars they just started collecting, which is amazing, because it was a big company, Yeah. So it's little things like that make a big difference.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a second here to check in with some of our people out here on Facebook and LinkedIn. Yeah. Over on LinkedIn, we are over 125 viewers. Hey, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us. A shout out to some of our commenters over on Facebook. We have Avi Aria says good morning. We have Adi Arazzini says, hi, Adi.
Hi, Adi.
She says that you were her first consultant for me, and she highly recommends people check you out and work with you.
And I love Adi. You should check her company, Timmy. They make amazing products.
Amazing. So I guess then taking a look at this, Adi, we've looked at the process. We've looked at, the problems we may run into. I guess let's take a look at then, once we've got these done. I know we mentioned we shouldn't try to change them too much once you're already working on them, but do you see, I guess, once we've lined up this whole process, do you find that business owners find a lot of snags that they didn't realize existed in their business once they get to the end?
Absolutely. And that's the fun part. That's where they find the money. That's where showing the money comes in. That's where they find the things that they need to do. But again, you also can recognize what works for them. So then they feel more secure and stable, because they go, oh, this is the way we've been doing it. Give you an example. I was just working with a company, and their sales plateaued. They were doing really well, and then it plateaued, and they had different reasons why it happened. Mm-hmm. the industry changed, and they had, there were competitors in town, and the way the industry, it's like, they didn't keep with the time. So there were different regulations, and all of those were external reasons that they couldn't do anything about it. So then we go, okay, you know what? We need to document your sales process and your marketing process. And we did that. And then start asking them the questions. And one of the things we realized is that they used to have a marketing person who would do basically business development, that they will go door to door. Basically, they were it's like they were selling parts, car parts, and they were going door to door to dealerships and talking to them, giving them little gifts, like, cookies and donuts and, little, just like being in communication, and just like developing those relationships.
Yeah, creating goodwill in the community.
That's exactly right. And they totally dropped it. And they
wow, that's a big drop.
It is. But I didn't recognize that until we actually documenting the procedures, because I start asking the questions about what happened. What were you doing here? What's your process? Oh, we don't have a process for that. Well, what were you doing? Oh, yeah, when we have Cindy was working for us, this is what we did. And then we documented exactly the steps that they had her do. And then they realized that got dropped. They put it back in, and stats were starting to go up again.
Wow.
And now they are going to have that process, and they're not going to let go of that for sure.
Wow. How could you miss that? Because like having a company goodwill ambassador like that, I just imagine how that could like change the game, because you're constantly in communication with your people. And at the same time, you're creating more of a reason for them to like you as well.
Right. But we see that very often, because even now in the pandemic, right, people see it in the future. So now it's May 2020. And, people have that first reaction of like, okay, let's cut all expenses. Let's cut our marketing. Let's not do anything. Let's not communicate. Let's hide, so that's the opposite of what you need to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we've doubled down and we've done more communication. We've told people you need to market more, because you know what? People are moving less money. So you need to be the one to get it in your business and to help those people, right? Like if we stop, Absolutely. It's going to be a lot harder to fix this whole situation when this ends. We don't know when this ends.
Right.
Well, this has been amazing here today, Adi. I feel like I've learned so much. I know our audience has learned so much.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we're forgetting to cover today that I'm just not thinking of?
Yes. The most important part of the project.
Oh my gosh, go for it.
Well, Jeremy, what will be the difference between success and failure of documenting your processes and procedures?
The difference between success and failure? Implementation, really.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay, there we go. Let's go for it.
You have to make those processes and procedures accessible, and you have to make sure that your employees are able to actually access those processes and procedures, right? So what I recommend is using a document management system that works for you, but make it in such a way, do not put it in some folders on, you're using Google Docs or Word documents or whatnot. Just put it in some folders and forget about it, because it will make it hard for people to reach it. I really recommend using a platform, an online platform. I use it with many of my clients. There are many platforms out there. I love using Suite Process. It's one of my favorite platforms, and a lot of my clients are using it because it's, each person has a login. You have it all electronically. And one of the things we also forgot to say is that when we document those processes and procedures, make it interesting. Don't just type it up, because people have different way of learning. Some people are visual. Some people like to read and write. Some of them like the auditory part. So I always use screenshots. I use videos. I use audio. I use. I also make it so they can have something when I train on it, so they have to do it and ask questions about it. So it's very important to document it so it's interesting. It has different aspects of it. It's very visual, not too many words. I always keep it very short. I don't like when I look at procedures that have all this pages and pages of something. Who reads that, right? That's one of the things when I said at the beginning is don't go into too many details. Just leave that. Nobody reads that. That's the problem. So make a short video and use one of those platforms to actually get that. You can upload the videos. Like when I use Suite Process, I upload the videos to it, and then you can have a training video right there. And so that makes it so people can access it, and it's easy to train. And then you have to present it. You have to train it. and you have to make it part of your culture so it's actually followed by all. So let's say, for instance, if you have an employee that you issued a process and your employee hasn't been following it, then instead of just say, I told you that many times, or just tell him it again verbally, refer them to that procedure. Have them reread it, have them follow it, and figure out if there's something they didn't understand about it or why they are not following it. And that is the key component of this project, is actually making sure it's being followed and followed by all.
I love that. And I'm glad that you mentioned the idea of written versus video and audio as well, because I know for me, like, everything we document in our company is documented, and it's because most of what we do is virtual. Everything we do is in screen recording and also in written form, because you have to understand, like, especially like a computer-based process, you talked about complexity of processes. Like, oh my gosh, if you try to write up a process that's done on a computer, it's like 67 pages. And the people have no idea what you're talking about, because you're like, click here, do this, do that. When you show somebody on a narrated video recording, it's so much easier to grasp what you're actually talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Adi, this has been amazing today. I know I've learned a ton. I'm sure our audience has learned a ton. Once again, your email is actually circulating on the bottom if people want to get in touch with you. But for people watching this, if they want to get in touch with you, I know you're also willing to do more interviews and trainings right now as well. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Email me or call me. My number is 503-662-2911. So that's 503-662-2911, or email me, and I do free consultations where you can ask me anything. You can ask me any questions about your business, and I can also help you get started by identifying that area of your business where you should start documenting. So feel free to reach out. And thank you, Jeremy. That was awesome.
Very cool. Adi Clevitt, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This was great.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, everyone. So you heard Adi. If you guys are looking for help in getting your processes together, make sure you get in touch with her. I appreciate you guys spending your time with us today and learning with us today, because there are so many other things you could be doing on a Thursday, and instead you spent your time with us. So thank you so much. Have an amazing day. Now go out there and start growing your business.
Sounds good. Absolutely.